how long this will take. It may take 2 hours. We may get it done in an hour. All right, just so you're
Okay.
aware of that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So welcome everybody. Today is day 75. We're going to have day 4 of our intro to React portion of the class. I am going to write with you 2 different applications. They will be different, although in some ways they're very similar. All right. We will conclude the intro to React portion of the class next week, either on Monday or on Tuesday, because I have 2 more projects and I don't know how long either one of them will take. All right. I met with Evan. In fact, I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to start class on time, but we met this morning. And next week, you will all be getting from me an email regarding a course evaluation. Now, just so you know, once you fill that out, I never see it. I all I do is administer it. I don't get a copy or anything else. It's just going to give you an address for a website. And you go out there, and I think it's a 3-pronged thing where you will do an instructor evaluation, a book evaluation, and a class evaluation. All right, as far as I know. And the only thing I would tell you about that, and I'm doing it like this because I'm going to be telling my other students as well, my afternoon class. All right, and that is that if I go out here to Inside Rankin, it's kind of important. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to waste your time here or anything. But if I go out to here, come on. All right, so this is the page for your class, okay? And it has here course level outcomes. All right, this is just on the Inside Rankin page. Write standards compliant HTML5 and CSS3 to structure and style a web page. That's number 1. Number 2, use CSS3 to position elements on a page using responsive web design techniques, including Bootstrap. Number 3, create websites that include images, lists, tables, video, audio, and icons. Number 4, develop web forms that use JavaScript to respond to events. Number 5, solve problems using fundamental programming concepts, including variables, branching, and loops. And number 6, manipulate the DOM using JavaScript and jQuery. Again, the reason I'm mentioning that to you is what you are going to get on there is it'll say, did we meet those objectives? Be honest. If you think there's something we didn't do well, put it down. The only way the course improves is if I get constructive criticism. You know, it's funny because I've even told the graduates they want to bash me, so they won't see me anymore. I won't. All I get is a summary of this. Okay, and I've had people say good things. At the school I used to teach at, I had a person for whatever reason they just didn't like me. I've had people complain and say I hate his voice, all sorts of stuff. So like I said, I've run the whole gamut with that. Okay, remember your electronic portfolio will be due next Thursday. A week from today, all right, I have to have grades in. And the earlier I can have grades in, the more they appreciate it. Because if there's any kind of problem with the grades, okay, they can get back to me, and they like to be able to get back to me before noon, okay, because usually starting at noon they put all the grades into the system so that students can get them as soon as possible. All right, I'll leave it at that. So what we are going to cover today, and I'm going to show you the finished products. All right, I'm going to give you this folder again, and again it's got repos inside of a repo just like we had before. But I'm going to show you first. This is the first one that we're going to create right now. I don't think it'll take long, but I guess we'll find out in the end. All right. So this is a very, very simple calculator. All right. And you'll notice it looks kind of ugly. You could style it any way you wanted to. But if I come in here and put in nothing in one or both fields and I attempt to do an operation, you must enter a number. All right. If I come through here and put in 450, that number, and then I put in here 23. All right. I can add, I can subtract, I can multiply, I can divide, and I can modulo. All right. The clear works, etc. So that's the first one that we're going to go over in just a couple minutes. But while we're at it, since I've got this open, show you the second one too. All right, so that's the first one. And there's not really a lot of code. There's enough, but it's not terrible. Let's see. So I'll run the other one quick for you. Like I said, this one will look more um, like a quote real calculator, unquote. Now, yesterday was the NFL draft. I actually was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so I'm a Packer fan. Why am I telling you that? Well, you'll see when you see the calculator. Okay, so it's Packer green and gold. All right, so if I come in here and I put 852 divided by 12 and I hit that, all right, I literally put it out to 2 decimal places for the answer on there, but you can see that. So this one has got some styling. There's virtually no styling on the first one. This one I put some in, I was just playing around with it before. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. Get rid of that. All right. And the other thing that I wanted to mention as far as what's in here, okay, I found this thing online yesterday, and I thought it was fantastic. React tutorial for beginners, a comprehensive guide for beginners. It was literally written. Notice it's been updated, but it was at first written for 2021, but it's literally 17 lessons. And I took the first lesson that was online and I put it into this Word document. But boy, if you want to become, if the other ones in here are as good as this first one is, it did a really good job of explaining things. All right. Plus, it explains some stuff that I have mentioned, but I haven't even tried yet. So that's in there. This is the updated one for it. All right, the 2023 version of it. So that's in there. And as I've been doing, there's a couple more URLs that I gave you. All right, we're going to talk about when we do the second version of this calculator, we're going to use something called eval. And I think I mentioned the other day that there are articles out there, eval is evil. So I found a couple of those. These are the two that I just showed you. And this is something that I was sent and I thought it sounded like it might be worth reading. All right, so with that said, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to create a new folder. And don't ask me why, but I called it Easy Calc because it's an easy calculator. So just easy CALC. I am going to open up that folder. And inside of here, I'm going to do my git bash. And I'm going to do an npx create react app dot. And as you know, it'll take a minute or so before that gets going. All right. And after it does, we're just going to go in and start writing we're going to write some, well, like I said, we're going to write the text that goes along with this. Now that I look at it, they both have a little bit of CSS in them. So, all right, it's coming. There we go. All right. Minimize that and we'll just start. As you know, now we've got our beginning. All right. Template or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to open up the file, the folder rather, inside of code. There that is. And I'm just going to get started. So inside of source, I'm going to put most of the stuff that we're going to do here, of course, is going to go into app.css and app.js. All right. Now, we talked about this before. You don't have to do it, but typically I get rid of this file, the setup tests. I get rid of the report web vitals. I get rid of the logo SVG, and I get rid of the app test. For now, just to show you that it doesn't hurt anything, I'm going to leave all of them in here. All right. In the copy that you're going to get today, they have been removed. All right. But it doesn't really matter much one way or the other. So I'm going to bring up in here, I'm going to bring up app.js. I still don't want that picture of the logo to spin in there. So I'm removing that. And I'm going to remove everything that's in here, just like we've done before. Most of the time, when people come in here and they spin this thing up, all right, it's considered kind of a poor practice to have the name of a class the same name as what you're working on here. So usually people change that and make it a lowercase a. You don't have to do that, of course. And again, as I've shown you, most of the time people do this and they say const app equal, and they make this into an arrow function. But again, you don't have to do that. This will work just fine without it. All right. The only other thing I want to do is at the top of the program here is I want to import React and use state. All right. Both of them from React. Okay. So with all that said, if I ran the program right now, not much would happen because I'm not told anything to display. All right. So I'm going to do that right now. But again, in here is what we want to display. So above that, I'm going to put in the code that we want to write. All right. I'm going to have a couple things of use state. And I'm going to take both of these and initialize them right here inside of use state to just the empty string. There's a lot of ways, again, this could be done. All right. And why is it giving me that? Oh, I don't want that in the return. I'm sorry. Got to go above that. There we go. All right. So there's that. And this will be the answer. And again, it'll be equal to use state. And again, it'll be equal to the empty string. All right. So those are our two state variables right there. So we've got a state variable called calc and a state variable called answer. And the way that we will change those values is to change the value of calc, we'll use set calc. And to change the value of answer, we'll use set answer. All right. Next, I'm going to come in and create kind of like we did yesterday. Yesterday, if you remember, we created a thing that we called choices and we put in there rock, paper, scissors. It was yesterday or the day before, it doesn't matter. But these are going to be my operations. So I'm going to come in there and add those, and I will have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and we'll even provide for modulo. All right. Now, what doesn't it like? Oh, I didn't put the equal sign in there. How about that? There we go. All right. So I'm going to put a few returns in here. Okay. And it's what do I want to do with my calculation? Let's say that again. In here, I'm talking about what do I want to do with my calculation? All right. And again, there are different ways that we can write this. In fact, I'm doing this literally right in front of you. I don't like the way this looks. I'm going to make a couple changes. Sorry. So I'm going to put in here number 1 and set number 1. All right. And that's going to be the first number that we input in there. And I'm going to set that equal to use state, and that'll have a 0 in it. And then we'll do the same thing for number 2. Then we'll do our answer. So this will be number 2 and set number 2. And this will then be the answer. All right. And then finally, we'll have a message. And that message at the bottom will actually show the answer. And what I mean is, all right, if you watched me run that before, if I put in 56 and 8 and I hit the plus sign, it came back and it said 56 plus 8 equals 64. All right, 64 is the answer, but the message is the 56 plus 8 equals 64. All right, so again, const. And again, we'll just call that message and set message. And again, that will also be equal to a use state of the empty string. All right. I'm not going to use this until the next one. All right. I started to bleed together some of the code that I'd done for the next problem. I didn't want to do that, but I did. All right. So we've got this app, and in here right now, we have created 4 state variables. All right. When we run this, if you remember, we had 2 text boxes. Those text boxes were where you could enter a value in each. All right. Well, the first text box is going to be called number 1. The second text box is going to be called number 2. But you don't typically in React work directly with those values. So what I did was I created a couple local values. N1 is equal to parse float of number 1. You could probably figure out what's coming next. N2 is equal to parse float of number 2. Oops. All right. Okay. So I've got all that stuff. Now, if you remember, those of you who were in my C# class last semester, that a lot of times I would put something where I would say like a keep going type of thing. We had a Boolean variable. All right. So let's bring that in again. So I'm going to say let keep going. And I actually called it again in the one that you're going to get, but it's the same thing. All right. Let again equal true. All right. Why? I'm going to show you this right now. The first thing I want to do is I want to validate to make sure there was a number put into of the text boxes. So I wrote a routine here called validate data. And that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to say this: if N1 triple equals nothing, so if we put nothing in there, all right, or N2 had nothing in there, all right, or what if we put something else or a non-numeric in there? So I accounted for that too. Is NaN N1 or is NaN N2? Now, a lot of parens in there, and some of them aren't necessary, to be honest with you. But all I'm saying in there is, hey, if I put in something, if I left it blank, or I put something non-numeric in there, what do I want to do? All right. Well, that's the case where the data isn't valid. So I'm going to set a message here, and I'm just going to say, you must enter a number for number 1 and number 2. All right. So that's what should come out if we put something non-numeric or we leave it blank. But, okay, we want to work with that variable too, or that variable, that keep going. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to return false. Now, if I get down to here, I don't need an else. So in English, what this is saying is if I leave either one of those text boxes blank, or if I put a non-numeric value in either one of those text boxes, have a message appear on the screen that says you must enter a number. We could have said numeric value, whatever, for number 1 and number 2, and then we'll return false. All right. Otherwise, we'll return true. Now, you might say that's fine, but you're not really using this. We're going to use it right now. All right. Now, what's going to happen is for all 5 of our operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, all right, division, and modulo, they're all going to be incorporated as buttons. Okay. The reason I'm telling you that is if when we have buttons, the typically what happens is the system wants to boom. When you click a button, it wants to send something someplace. So what we're going to do with all 4 of these, the first thing is that we're going to do is we're going to do a prevent default on here because we don't want to send it anywhere. So we're going to start with addition. In order to be able to do that prevent default, we need to pass in the event. That's E. So E dot prevent default. All right. Now we're going to call this routine to validate the data. So we're going to say this, keep going equal validate data right there. We don't have to pass anything in. All right. But that's either going to return false or it's going to return true. We only want to go through the operation if it's going to return true. So if keep going, remember, and I've said this many, many times, that's a shortcut for if keep going, keep going equal true. All right, so if that's the case, then we want to actually do the addition because we put a number into each text box. So let answer equal N1 plus N2. All right, then set answer to answer. Remember, that's how we directly set something in here. And then we can set our message. And now we're just going to put in here N1 plus, looks a little funky. So keeping it simple, if I were to come in here and put 5 and 3 into each text box, a 5 into the first text box and a 3 into the second, it would add 5 and 3. It would have 8. It would set the answer to 8. And then the message would say 5 plus 3 equals 8. Hopefully that made sense. Now, the good news is the next 2 we can do real quickly. I can just come in here and copy this. All right. And put it in. And now this will become a subtract. All right. The only thing that has to change is 2 things, a minus sign here and a minus sign here. Because it's this, we're doing the same exact thing. All right. Multiply again will work the same way. So I can come down to here, paste again, change this to multiply, change the sign to a multiply sign here and here. So I now have 3 of my 5 operations done. The other good news, if you'd call it that, is the divide and the modulo are basically the same. Now, could we have taken these 3 things that are in here and made them into one routine? Because every time we're doing this, and then we're doing this, then we're doing this, etc. The answer is probably. There comes a point when you have to start thinking as a programmer, okay, am I actually maybe combining too much stuff together and making it hard for somebody possibly who might have to work on maintaining this program. All right. Okay. So we've got left, and I'm not going to copy anymore. We've got divide and we've got modulo. So I'm going to put these in here as this. So const divide. This looks pretty much the same thing as what we just done again. So again, this is keep going. But now what we want to do is different. All right. What do I mean? Well, this in two numbers here. That's correct. But but what if the second number was 0? We don't want to let you divide by 0. All right. Even though JavaScript does let you do it and it gives you infinity, the idea is we want to write this program as though it would work in any programming language. And in C sharp, for example, and I know you know this, Grant, but if I try dividing by 0, it would throw a divide by 0 exception. All right. And the program would stop. So all right. Else, otherwise it worked. We didn't have a 0 in there. So we can do what we did up here. And I'm just going to steal this now. All right, but now it will be a divide here and a divide here. All right. And the last good piece of news is the modulo is exactly the same as the divide, except in here, that'll have to be a modulo sign here and here. All right. So I'm going to copy all of this code that's right here. All right. And paste it in. I'm going to get an error because we've already got something called divide. Now it's modulo there. And again, this has to change to the percent sign, which is our modulo sign, as does this. All right. There's literally one more routine we have to write, and then we can go and add our code that is going to go in here in just a minute. And that is to clear the screen because there's a clear button on there. And I call this clear screen. Again, we could call it whatever we wanted. Does not need any parameters. And the easiest way is just to do a window dot location dot reload, which just basically clears everything that we put in there and it resets it to the default values. All right. So now we've got our logic in. Get rid of these semicolons. So the only thing, and I don't think I have any other semicolons in here, other maybe at the top. Yep. All right. So the only other thing that's in here right now, and you'll notice all these are gray because they're not being referred to in here. So we'll do that right now. All right. Not a lot of code, maybe 20, 30 lines. I don't know, maybe a little more. Okay. But first thing we want to put at the top here, I just made it an H3 and I said simple React calculator. Okay. And in fact, let's put that, let's take everything, just get used to in React. React is kind of a div crazy type of thing. Almost everything you end up doing ends up going into its own div. All right, most of the time. There. All right. So now what I want to put in here, and I'll put this down, put a little bit of spacing in here, is a form. All right. That's how this was implemented, was as a form. All right. Whoops. So the first thing I want to do is to come in here and put in my stuff for number 1. All right. And this is a key thing right here. So let me put in this line, then we'll go over it. I'm putting this over multiple lines. I want you to be able to see everything that's here. Righty. We'll fix these errors in just a second. That should have been a curly. I think that's where the error is coming from. There we go. Which means we only need one here. There we are. Still giving me an error. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem is here. Set number one, target dot value. These are backwards. There we go. So in English, this is going to make that label. All right. The value we're putting in there, that number one that you see right there, that one is this one right here. All right. And we're saying to the system, anytime this changes, all right, call set number one, because that'll take whatever value we put in there and it'll call that set number one. So this set number one is this set number one. So where the logical is being set up here, but here we're actually doing some processing in here. We're telling it whenever it changes. All right. In just a minute, not right now, but I'm going to copy all this and I'm going to put it in there because the number two is exactly the same. I'll just have to change where it says number one to number two. We'll do that in just a moment because between these two is where we had our buttons. So it said operator, and then we've got 5 buttons. Again, let me put all 5 in. And then we'll go over them. Okay, I'm just going to copy this down. All right, so we've got an add button. We've got a subtract button with a minus sign. We've got a multiply button with an asterisk. We've got a divide button with a forward slash. And finally, we've got a modulo button. All right, with the percent sign. And again, this is saying right here, whenever you click the button, so click on that button, call that routine. So when you click the plus button, it's going to call add, which is the add routine that's right here. And the same thing for the subtract, for the multiply, for the divide, and for the modulo. All right. So let's go back to here where we did our number one right there. Okay, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come down here and put in a blank line. And then I'm going to paste this in. And this will be number two. All right. So the only things that are left to do in here are to add, we need a button down here because we had a button called clear that when we clicked it would call that reload thing that we put in, or that clear screen, which did the window reload, and then we have to print out our message. That's it. So all right. And I did cheat a little bit here again. I put a little bit of just some BR tags in there where I really should have done that with CSS. But I mean, it's not like it's a big thing one way or the other. And then finally, my last div where I just put in here the message. All right. Now, right now, there's been no CSS put in this. I don't see anything that's showing me that there's any errors, but let's take a look at it. Oh, and I want to show you something about this too. Now, in the past, and I can do this. Okay, I can come over here now and I can type in npm start. That's normally what I do. No problem. That works just fine. But I'm going to leave this open. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to view right here, and I'm going to choose terminal. All right. Now what I have is an actual terminal. It's what I have here, even though the color's different, is exactly what I have here. You'll notice they say exactly the same thing. So I can do that and split my screen. So for instance, I can do an npx kill minus port 3000 like we did before, and it'll come back eventually. There you go. I can clear, and now I can do an npm start from right here. Uh-oh. Let's see what we here. Oh, I goofed up my BR tags. Okay, well, let's fix those. You notice it's kind of nice. Well, kind of nice in that it shows you the errors. And notice that one error can sure lead to a lot of other errors. All right. It also is telling me it's expecting a tag in. So I might have left a couple things off there. So let's look. Now I can take this, move it way down, come back up here. The first error will be real easy to fix because that's that BR. There it is. I didn't put an end on there. That'll fix that. Now that may have fixed everything. How do I know? I can go back to here and check here. All right. Usually what'll happen then is it'll rerun, but it didn't there. So let's see. So I'm going to do a file, save all again. All right. And I'm going to come back up and in here again, I'm going to do my npm start. Might still be an error. I don't know. Okay. Now I haven't put any CSS in here. We can look at that in just a bit. But the point is, if I leave these blank and I clear, or not clear, if I click anything, I get an error. N2 equal, that is not a function. Okay, then let's take a look at that. Yeah, it doesn't like something that's in there. If N2 equal 0, if N2 equal 0. It doesn't like something about that, which is interesting because I already had a working version of this before. Let's see what it says. Thing equal nothing is not a function. Do I have that in there someplace? Oh, I know where it is. It's at the top. Let's see. It's in here. Didn't mind this one, but one which is interesting. Trying to figure out what's wrong with that because there's nothing syntactically wrong with saying that. If N1 is equal to nothing, or N2, oh, I forgot my or here. Right there. That's probably the problem. All right, now you'll notice it went and recompiled it, and it says I have a warning. Answer is assigned a value but never used, which is a weird warning because it is being used. But I'm going to stop my run here with a Control-C, clear the screen, and then run it again. Some people like to split their screen like this and have their terminal running. Other people like to do it where it's on another screen like I've been showing you previously. So there's nothing in either one of these. All right, you must enter a number. If I only put in one number, I should get the same error, and I do. All right, let's put in 563 and 8. These are just arbitrary values. All right, plus, minus, multiply, divide, and modulo. Clear also works. Okay, so as far as I know, at least, that pretty much is everything that's in there. Okay, so let's take a look at trying to remember what I put in here. Let's see. I'm going to look at the finished product, so give me just a second here and you'll see it with me. The logic all works. Everything in there is fine. All right. But in the finished product, easy calc, oh, not there. It's React Calc, easy calc. All right. In here, I wanted to see, did I add any CSS here? I think the only thing that I added here was this text align center. So let's look at that and see. This stuff is all the stuff that you get out of the box. So I didn't add anything there, and I don't think I put in anything in index.css either. No, that's all the default stuff. So I have to make one change when I add that. So let me go back into here. In fact, I'm doing it from here. Okay. And we want to bring up app.css. Remember, we made this a little a. All right. Now that's the only thing I've changed. So now text align center. So save all. Let's run it one more time. In fact, we don't even have to run it. Let's just look at it on screen. And there it's centered. So I could have come in, added padding, added margin, etc., which probably would have been a good idea. Or I could have put in a blank line after here, a blank line after here. And I thought there was a couple blank lines there. It doesn't look like it took those. But the point is, hopefully what you see from this is really we spun this thing up, and we spun it up, in my opinion at least, fairly quickly. All right, we've gone through this now in less than about a half an hour or so. All right, so that's the first one. Any questions on this one, Grant?
I just have a quick question on the
Sure.
constants that you did at the beginning with the where you have the like, what is it? It was the first few lines of the number one and set number one in that array. Could you explain that real quick again on why we do that?
These?
Yes.
Okay, sure. All right. These are known as state variables. All right. So the state variables in the program are basically either what we're using for inputting or what we're outputting. All right. And a natural question would be, why didn't we just say here, like number one equal? All right, and do it here. And the answer is, notice what kind of thing they are. They're const. So the way you set these up in React is you set them up as constants. And the only way that you're able to actually change the value of this is through this. So the only way when you set it up like constants like this, for you always set up with two things in the array. The first thing is the variable, and the second thing is set followed by the variable name, and that's how you change its value. You may or may not have noticed that when we started running the program, we did have zeros. So if I came in here in this example, if I put 37 in here and 12, I'm just made those numbers up. They don't mean anything. But if I do a save all, okay, it's recompiling it right there down at the bottom and it says, oh, okay, so everything's fine. But if we look at it, now we have 37 and 12 in there. All right. So literally what these are doing is these are our states. So what we're saying here with use state is when the program begins, what do you want to have happen? So you can kind of look at it this way. When the program starts to run, it does a set number 1 and it passes 0 to it. It does a set number 2 and it passes 0 to it. It does a set answer and it passes the empty string to it. And it does a set message and it also passes an empty string to it. I believe this would work fine here if instead of putting in the empty string, we probably could put in null too, which means the absence of a value. So that should work just fine if we did that, and I can run it in just a second. All right. The only other thing is notice that this is still gray. All right. We are using answer. It's in here. There it is. And we're using it in here too. All right. So why, why? I believe that if we did this, I don't know if this would get those errors out of there or not. It's not typically the way that it's done, but I want to see if I remove these, if the message that we got in there, that warning that said answer was never being used. Now what you should notice on here is answers is no longer grayed out. All right. It still says that it's working here. All right. So notice it still says compiled with one warning, but let's try it in here now. All right. All right. Why get an error? Why? Assignment to a constant variable. Well, what the heck does that mean? Remember, this, and this are all const. And I'm trying to directly change the value of a const. Now, if I do this and change it back to it, this is a different variable. When I put let in here, these are local variables. Every one of these variables is local. What I mean too is I'm creating them right there. All right. They are local to that routine. So I've got a let here, a let, a let. I'll need another let, and another let, and another let, and another let. So now it's gray again. Technically, you could look at it that, hey, we're not even using that variable right there called answer. And you know what? I wouldn't disagree with you. But we need it so that we're able to use the set for it. So what we're concerned with here is the state of our application. And the state of our application says, since these are constants, these four, the only way you can change these four variables is through these four set methods. Am I answering your question?
Yes, thank you. That
Okay.
really clarified for me.
Okay. And it's different. It's a different way of looking at it. All right. Because most people would say, I'm not used to writing code this way, and I'm not either. All right. It's just that's the way that it is. That's kind of a stupid explanation, but it's the best I can give you. And again, we could go back in here now, remove that, remove that, remove that, and remove that. And the advantage of removing those is the program would be a little smaller. That's it. All right. So let me do a file save all, and I'm going to stop this one. What you'll notice too is in here, there's really not a lot in this program. There really and truly is not. But if I come down here and I do a properties, notice how big it is. It's almost 300 meg. All right. And why is it almost 300 meg? You guess what? You know, node modules. Out of that 280 meg, there's 279 of it. That's why when we talked about before, when you push this thing out to the internet, why you don't push node modules with it, because that cuts the size down from about 280 meg to about a meg. And if you want people to use your product and possibly even download your product, you want it to be as small as possible. Then it'll download quicker. All right. It won't be taking up a lot of room on their machine, etc. All right, let's start on the next one. We'll take a break in about 5 or 10 minutes, okay? So this was Easy Calc right here, the one we just did. So let me close this. All right. So that's closed. I thought I might have had, nope, I don't have another one open. So with the second one, let's do this one the other way. And what I mean is this we're just going to call, I don't know, React. I'll call it React Calc. All right. The other one was Easy Calc. I was going to call it Hard Calc, but it's not that hard. So let's come in here. We're on the desktop. And I'm just going to do an npx create React app. And again, we'll call it React Calc. I'm going to hit enter in just a second. And you've heard this before, but in just a second, you should see somewhere in here, somewhere in my mess, you should see a new folder being created. Now, it will complain when you do certain things. For instance, if you already had a folder called React Calc, it would complain. All right, which should make sense. All right. And if you put a space in the name, it'll even complain, at least sometimes it does, when you've got capital letters in there. It likes all lowercase. All right. And there's React Calc right there. And you'll notice it's building it. So there's node modules, which takes the longest. This one will add a little more styling too, so it'll look a little nicer. You already saw the end product. There's not really much more code in here than the other one. And just to show you what we'll do with this one, all right, just as a little bit of something different. So this is React Calc right here, the one we just created. All right, I'm going to come to source. I'm going to go into my app.js. Let's open it again with code. All right, and this time what we'll do, and again, we won't do much of it before the break, but what we're going to do is we're going to build the interface portion of it first. What do I mean? Let's go into source. Let's go into our app.js. Again, I want to remove this. All right, again, I'm going to make that a lowercase a and make this an arrow function. All right. And then finally, make that a lowercase a and remove everything that's in here. So what we'll do first is we will this time we'll write the interface. Now, sometimes you can get errors when you do that. It is possible to get errors because you might be referring to something you haven't created yet. But don't worry, it's not going to hurt anything. All right. So we've got our class name equal app. We're going to put this whole thing kind of like we did. We could call it container. We could call it wrapper. All right. I'm going to just call it wrapper. All right. And in here, this is going to look a little bit weird. So bear with me for a second. Okay. So let me write the whole thing in here. let me close this so we got some more room. There we go. Now we could have put this on multiple lines and it probably would have been easier for you to see then. But this is handling what's at the top of the page or at the top of our calculator. All right. So this is saying for the answer, okay, if we're done, show us the answer. But think about this. When you've got a calculator, what I don't want to be able to do is to hit the plus sign. So I don't want to be able to say 37 plus 8. So what this is going to say is basically, if I'm trying to do something I shouldn't do, like hit an operator multiple times, don't allow me to do it. That's the best explanation I can give you. It's not a great one, but it's the one you're going to get. So we're going to then have our operators in here. All right. And there will be 4 buttons. Okay. So these are going to be, this one is going to be like a regular calculator, and most regular calculators don't show a modulo. We could if we wanted to. All right, but all I have to do here is change these symbols. Now, this should make sense to you. And what I mean is, when I say that is, these are going to be our buttons that are going to allow our operations to take place. All right, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. All right, and that's what's in there. And let me do, because there's only one more thing we have to set up in here. All right, another div. Now, I'm going to put this and call it digits, and it's fine. It's going to hold 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those 10 digits, and it'll hold our period, and it'll hold the equal sign. So even though it's called digits, it's doing kind of multiple duty or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to steal one of these. Put it in here. So it's going to be a button, on click, update calc, but instead of a plus sign, this is going to be a 0. And oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to make it a 1. And I'm going to put a 1 here. All right. Then I'm going to copy this down. All right. So then we're going to have 2, 3, 4, oops. So that'll be our interface. The only one that's a little bit different is this one. This is going to be the equal sign right here. All right. This basically says, if I click one of those, put it on the screen. All right. But with the equal sign, I don't want that to happen. I want it to actually calculate. All right. So I'm just going to come in here with the on click. I'm going to do it like this, the on click equal, and we're going to change that to just calculate like that. And the good news is that's our entire interface. That's it right there. All right. Now I have no idea because I didn't do it before in this order, but I have no idea if I do this and come in and view, bring in a terminal. All right. And come in and do an NPM start, I might get a bunch of errors or it might show. All right. See what I'm saying? Not defined yet, because that stuff has to be defined up in the actual code. I didn't think it would work, but I thought, what the heck? All right. So this is coming down here for each one of those buttons and for our, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And the period and the equal sign. All right. So it is 9:06. Let's take just about 9:07. Let's take till 9:20. Then we'll finish this up. All right, it is 9:20, so I'm going to continue on. This is that first article, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is we are going to use eval in here. All right, and this is the eval is evil. Here's the other one. Eval is evil, but not why you may think. This is that React tutorial that I'd mentioned to you, and this has got all the lessons in there. So those are all those lessons. This is the one that I made into a Word document for you. And then finally, this is the updated one of that same thing to 2023. So you have all these links. And we got all sorts of errors. So let's fix those right now. All right, near the top. And you'll notice I put my imports up here. Okay, I put my imports up here that I'm grabbing basically before I put in the stuff that I'm importing locally. This is my app.css file that we're going to work on. There's no rhyme or reason of doing that except for me, if I'm grabbing something, all right, that isn't technically mine, so to speak, I'll put that up above. Now, I'm sure Evan will have his own way of showing you stuff this summer, and there's nothing wrong with what I just did. There's definitely nothing perfect about what I just did. All right. Okay. So there's about, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 lines we'll have in here. Then we'll put in some CSS. All right. So I'm going to have I'm going to have my state variables. They'll be calc. Not user. It's use and not dtate. I don't know what I did here, but that looks a little better. All right. And this is what I started typing into the last one, but this is the operations that we're going to do. Okay. So this is going to be an array that's going to hold a plus sign, a minus sign, a multiply sign, a divide sign. Well, I guess I skipped that one. That's okay. The order in which you put those, of course, wouldn't matter. And I'm going to put the decimal point in here as well. I don't know if I'm going to need that in there or not, but we'll see. All right. So, like I said, now there's probably, I don't know, 20 lines, 25 lines. All right. Now, we've got here update calc that we're calling all over the place. And that's what was giving us the error because we hadn't written anything that was called update calc. So let's do that right now. And that'll have some kind of a value. So it'll be basically whatever key we just pressed. Somehow I've got one too many Let's look at that in just a second. No, I think I do need that. We're going to go over all this in just a second. Now, the only thing we have to write yet is a 3-line calculate. Well, we have literally about 10 lines to key in after this. But what this is doing, a little hard to understand or maybe wrap your head around, but it's going and it's making the checks that we talked about before. In that, what it's doing is it's trying to make sure that you have only one period in here, that you hit any sign. So like if you say plus, you hit plus only once, then it must have a value. All right. So what it's saying is if any of those conditions are in there, just return. In other words, don't accept it. Otherwise, do accept it. All right. That's the best way I can tell you. That may not be the best explanation. All right. So then it's going to set the answer. Now, this eval, one of the reasons that you'd see articles like I just showed you, like eval is evil, one of the reasons that you see things like that, all right, is that what eval does is it takes away control from the programmer and it gives control totally back to the machine. Depending on your point of view, that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. All right. Again, it just depends on your point of view. All right. So we've now got that update calc done, but we need to do the actual calculation. So when you hit the equal sign. All right. So the other one was handling everything else that you were entering, but basically, but the equal sign. It's going to be the same thing that we put up above. Except they did it to 2 decimal places. Now, so why am I doing it here? And why am I doing it here? This is giving us a running total. You'll see that in just a moment. This is giving us a final total. And if you say, I don't get it, you'll have to wait till you see this. And I'm going to put in the, next, I'm going to put in the CSS. All right. We literally now have about 7 or 8 more lines to key in this part of the code. And that is, first, we're going to have a key in there that says delete. And when you put that in, what that delete should do is it should just, it's like hitting a backspace key. If it's empty, there's nothing to do. So just return. All right. So if I hit the delete key, but I haven't done any calculation yet, there's nothing to delete. So just return. Otherwise, remove the previous character. And we're using, this is JavaScript. We're using the JavaScript slice function. Okay. Now I could have missed something. I don't think I have. That is everything. All right. That is all of our stuff. So let me go in. and we are adding to app.css. So let's bring that up. Right now, the only thing that's in there, I want to make that a lower a. If you remember, we changed that in here to a lowercase a. So that's why in here, I'm making it a lowercase a. Now we're not working with the logo anymore. This is all logo stuff. We don't have a special header in here. We don't have that link in here, and the keyframes is, again, it's all making it spin. So all we have in here now is that. All right. So let's go in and let's add some CSS in here. All right. Well, that text align center, I could do that, but that's a cheesy way of doing things. This is a lot more refined app than the one we did earlier. So let's do a display flex in here. Let's have it take up the entire screen. When I say that, I just mean that that's the whole view height. It should be centered on the screen. So align items, center, semicolon there. Here we go. This one, we are going to try to pretty it up a little. So let's put some padding all the way around it. And let's give it a background color of white. Only 2 Ds in padding, not 3. All right, so that's for the app itself. It should center it, take up 100% of the screen. Everything we put in there should be centered. We should have a little bit of padding in here. And set to has been set to white. That's for the app itself. Now let's do a couple things here for our calculator. And you hopefully noticed that when we were putting our code in here, we would always say class name. You can't say class equals here. You can't do that when you're working with JavaScript, because if you say class equals, it thinks you're trying to create an object-oriented class. All right. No, we want to add an existing class to it. So you say class name. All right. So in the calculator, we'll put some padding in. Nothing really extreme right there. All right. We've got a class that we call display. We're going to do a lot of the same stuff, but not everything the same. In fact, we should never have overflow in here, but if we do, in other words, if we try to shove 10 pounds worth into a 5-pound bag, just hide it. Okay. All right. Then display. Like I said, I notice now that these first 4 things here are the same. All right. So if I removed the overflow hidden, I could have combined those into one, which would have been a lot cleaner, but I'm just going to keep it the way that I did it. You remember that display had a span in it. And this is going to be our running total on here. Again, if you don't know what I mean, just bear with me for a second here. It's going to be a lot smaller. And we're going to make it a color where it doesn't show that much. All right. Hoping you're still there, Grant. My internet has been a little flaky today. It's dropped a couple times, so. Our buttons, we didn't even give them a class. We could have. We're just taking some of the defaults and removing them there. We're going to make the color of our buttons is going to be black. I'm sorry, it's going to be white. We will change our cursor so that when you touch one of these, it'll change to a pointer, so it looks like a finger. And that'll just have it come onto the screen in a little bit. All right. When we hover over a button, we're going to have it change slightly. A lot of times you see this in sites for a lot of different things. So when something becomes active, we're going to change the opacity from 100% to 90%. All right. Just so it stands out a little bit that we're doing that. That's all. All right. We had a thing up over here, if you remember, that was called here, I think it's that class name. All right, we got to do that in digits yet. So we'll do a display flex on that too. Remember these are the operator buttons. This is just a positioning thing. We want it to appear at the top and want it basically to be set up so that each thing is, it's laid out kind of evenly at the top. This is where I went online and I found the color, the Packer green and gold. So you could always change this, of course. There's the gold. Made it pretty dark. Could have just said bold right there too. It wouldn't really matter. And these are the individual digits. And then we want our buttons. And again, we want them to be laid out as well. So X. And this is the Packer green, I believe. Okay. 2, 3, 7, 3, 1. Looks a lot darker, but let's look and see what it looks like now when we run it. So I'm going to come back up in here. It's possible I've made some typing errors. I hope I haven't, but we'll see. And I did. Okay, it looks like I've got 1, 2, 3 errors, so let's fix all of them. First one on line 5 says React Hook use state is called in function app. They're all in here. I'm going to use state. And that looks okay. CSS. Oh, I think that should still be a capital A. That might be what's screwing up a lot of that. All right, we called it A down here, lowercase, but that should have still been an uppercase. All right. React expects basically everything that you call it as far as methods will start with an uppercase. Let's see what that did. There still may be one or two errors, but we'll get them out. Well, that isn't good. The layout is wrong, but let's see once. See, this is where we said we get a partial answer right here. So if I say 1, look, and they're all pluses too. Well, I have to fix that. All right, let's go in there and fix that, and then we'll call it a period. One or two more things I want to mention first, then we will. All right, let me grab my CSS here. Somehow this stuff was all here. Let me get rid of this. And you've got a working one, so. All right, that looks better. Let's see what that did. I think it did much. It's got my numbers. That all looks good. Looks fine. I'll quickly run through this from the top, because it's pretty obvious something is hosed here. Well, right away, this should send me a signal because notice the color is different on here, which says I very well could have had something wrong in here. Let's look at that. Oh, that actually looks correct. Ah, well, that'll fix those symbols. Silver. Not from there, I won't. Let's just do it from here. So view, terminal. Well, this is definitely wrong. I don't know what the problem is either. My symbols are back, so if I say 12 plus 7 equals, there's 19, and there's the running total right there, minus 6. It's working, it's just that this is screwed up when you can see that. And my guess is, I'm going to try something here, and we'll see if we can get this to work. I'm going to take the one that's complete, that it works. I don't know if it's a layout thing or what it is. So yeah, eval can be harmful. We know that already. There it is. I don't know what was wrong with it, but there it is. So again, I can delete. Might have been better changing that to a C button for clear that they have on a lot of calculators, which would have cleared everything out, but it really doesn't matter that much. So 158 times 7, divide that by 13, multiply that by 25, subtract from there 8, add to that 86, and divide from that 58. Okay, so you can see it is working right now. All right. Could it be improved? Yes. All right. This was not meant to necessarily be a finished product. You could take it and do whatever you'd like to do with it. All right. Just a couple more things to mention. Okay. If you want to get ahead for the class on Monday, then what I'd ask you to do, please, is to, let's see, make sure I'm giving you the right one here. And I think this is it. This has changed a lot since the last time I wrote this. All right. And again, as always, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But if you go out to here, I'm going to actually ask you to go out to two different websites. I'll give you the other one in a minute. But if you go out to openweathermap.org, all right, and go out there and go out to, let's see, go out to sign in. It's free. There's no credit card. As you can see, there's just an email and a password. That's it. That'll allow you to create an account. All right. And then what that'll do is it'll give you what's called an API key. All right. Mine are shown there. I don't want to keep, I'll probably remove them anyway. You can add another key at any time. But what that key will allow you to do is it will allow you to go in and put in any city and get the current conditions for that city. So we're actually going to be using an API. All right. The other one that you can go out to is, oh boy. I don't think it is IMDb. I think there's an open movie. Maybe not. That's it. OMDB, the Open Movie Database. This is the other one that we're going to use. So again, you can go out there and do the same thing. All right. You can come in there and you can ask for an API key and notice what it'll say in here to generate a key. All right. I believe you might have to come in here and log into here as well. All right. But if you get some time and you want to do a little bit of reading, and I mean a minimal amount, then for Monday, you can go out to those two sites, openweathermap.org and omdbapi.com. And from each of those, you're able to go in there and get what's called, set up an account and get what's called an API key. All right. If for some reason you don't want to do it, you will be able to use my key, but I'm going to make sure that after the one that I give you, that after we get done on Monday, that I'm going to remove those keys. All right. It's free. There's no sign, with the sign up on those, they're pretty much the same. There's nothing special that you're going to have to do in order to be able to use them. So we will do one where we'll set it up where it's going to be very simple. I did absolutely nothing as far as CSS, but you'll be able to put in like Wentzville as an example. Hit enter, and you're going to get all the forecast information for Wentzville, the current conditions, etc. The other one we'll do a little bit of work in here to try to pretty it up. All right, I'm still working on that one because I had a copy of it, but internally React has changed. So some of the calls that I made in there don't work any longer. So I'll have to work on that this weekend. Other than that, that's what I had for today. Grant, any questions on anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. And again, just for everybody's edification here, on Monday, all right, I'm plan on taking the email that I get for course evaluations and forwarding it on to each of you in this class, to each of you in my afternoon class. All right. And after I do that, all I ask is that by the end of next week, and it shouldn't take you long, I'll have to go over it with you though, because there's actually 3 different evaluations Actually, it's more than that. But I think the one we choose is like the third one. It's the one for online students. All right. So with that said, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you Monday.
Thank you, you too.